For more on this, I'm joined by Kevin Matthews. He's an assistant professor of European history at George Mason University near Washington, D.C. Kevin, thanks for joining us. First, what do you make of Secretary Mnuchin's comments there, the type of priority that can be given to a Britain outside of the EU?
Well, it's music to the ears of the Brexiters, but whether or not it's going to amount to anything remains to be seen. The main thing that Boris Johnson's government has to worry about right now is this transition period that they'll be going into this coming week when the withdrawal agreement goes into effect. On the 1st of February, it's not going to seem that anything has changed because there'll be an 11-month transition period. But in that time period, they're supposed to hammer out a whole new trade relationship with the EU, its largest trading partner, and make arrangements that will put them in a new world that they've not been in for 45 years. So it sounds good, but whether or not it's going to really amount to anything remains to be seen.
You're a historian. In 1973, when Britain joined the predecessor of the EU, it was sort of seen that once you're in, you stay in. Would anybody have predicted a country like the UK ever leaving and the consequences of doing so?
No, and as a matter of fact, the British spent years trying to get into the EU. Harold Macmillan saw it as the cornerstone for Britain's future prosperity, and he was blocked by Charles de Gaulle. It was only after de Gaulle left the scene that Ted Heath was able to get the EU to, well, was in the European Economic Community, to agree to British membership. And an awful lot of Britain's policies ever since have been based on, to some extent, its role in the EU. So they're taking a huge leap into the dark.
On Wednesday, the European Parliament is scheduled to vote on this. This is largely a formality, but what can we expect in the process?
Well, yeah, you're right. That's going to be a formality. What's going to come next is some very hard bargaining between the British and the other 27 members, the remaining 27 members of the EU, each of whom has their own interests involved. Now, Johnson says he can get this new trade deal done by the 31st of December, but most people don't think that's possible. If it doesn't seem possible, he can ask for an extension of the transition period in June, but he's already said that he won't do that. And so if that happens, they don't get a trade deal done by December 31st, 2020, on New Year's Day 2021, Britain will go over the cliff edge, and you'll have a no-deal Brexit, which is what everyone has been trying to avoid for the better part of 4 years. So Johnson has made an awful lot of promises to the British people, and now this is going to be a situation where those promises are going to crash into reality.
We know this isn't just about trade. Historically, blocs have been a key factor in stability, especially post-World War II. What does this mean looking ahead for global order, for European order, with Britain leaving?
Well, from my perspective, it's coming at a very dangerous time for the world, because this is a period in which we need more cooperation, and what we're seeing is a lot of economic and political nationalism. You see it in the United States with Donald Trump, you see it with Boris Johnson, you see it with Bolsonaro in Brazil, claiming that they're going to put their national interests first and foremost, and in some cases only, and the rest of the world be damned. I don't see how you're going to be able to solve existential crises like global warming if you don't have cooperation, and you're getting the opposite right now. So it's a very dangerous situation to be in. I don't think people thought through the implications of that.
When they voted for this first in June of 2016, more than 3.5 years ago, why has it taken so long?
It's taken so long because this was not going to ever be simple. First, everyone was surprised by the result. I think the Brexiters more than anybody else. And what they discovered was that this wasn't a simple case of cutting the cord and going off. You can't unravel a 45-year political and economic relationship like that overnight. And that's the trouble that they've been in ever since.
Are there things historically that should not be put up for a referendum vote? And I'm mentioning this given Europe's history and your background in this. Things that have had popular support that would be detrimental for a country if it was brought up to a vote?
Well, this is, I think, a classic case where a referendum should not have been held, and it was done purely for political reasons. The Conservative Party's been tearing itself apart since the 1990s over Europe, and the then Prime Minister David Cameron thought that this was going to finally get rid of that problem for him. He didn't expect to lose. He did, and now we are where we are. And it's going to have adverse consequences, I think, for the UK for years to come.
All right, Kevin Matthews from George Mason University, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.